So there's this story about a man who smoked for 20 years. And he tried everything to quit. I mean, the patches, therapy, even hypnosis. But nothing, and I mean nothing, worked. Then, on a trip to Japan, everything changed for him. He met a monk who showed him a completely different way to approach it. And get this, within 3 months, the 20-year habit was just gone. And it wasn't through fighting it, but with a method that almost felt too simple to be real. This whole story just makes you wonder about how we approach change, doesn't it? And that brings us to the big question for today. What if our entire approach to breaking bad habits is totally backwards? What if all that battling and struggling with our urges is the very thing that makes them stronger? And what if the real secret isn't in fighting at all, but in something completely different? You know, in the West, we really tend to see habit change as this kind of internal war. It's all about willpower, right? A fight against our weaker self. But the thing is, this approach, it so often leads to this brutal cycle of failure and shame. I mean, we've all seen it, right? We make these huge, all-or-nothing promises to ourselves. We set these impossibly high standards, and then, when we inevitably slip up, we just blame ourselves. But maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't our lack of willpower. Maybe the problem is the strategy of using force in the first place. This right here, this shows two totally different ways of thinking. Our Western approach often leans on force, that all-or-nothing mindset, and then, of course, the shame that comes when we fail. But the Japanese approach? It's built on awareness, on making progress just 1% at a time, and, this is a big one, treating ourselves with compassion. It's a massive shift in perspective. So let's really dive into that different way. It's a mindset that actually moves away from all that internal conflict and instead moves toward the state of like a gentle curiosity, where you just observe your habits instead of attacking them. This was the exact advice a master gave to a Japanese monk who was just struggling with his awful temper. He tried everything to fight his anger, to crush it, but that only seemed to make it stronger. And this new advice, to just watch it without any judgment, it probably seemed crazy, but it ended up changing everything for him. So he didn't try to push the anger down or ignore it. He just noticed it. He would feel where it was in his body, and he watched the thoughts that popped up with it. And by doing this, he created this little gap between himself and the emotion. He learned that he could feel angry without being an angry person. And just like that, the anger started to lose its power over him. Okay. So let's see how we can take this idea of observation and turn it into a super powerful practical technique. We can apply it directly to those intense urges and cravings that always seem to throw us off track. This is the exact method that businessman in Tokyo used to quit his 20-year smoking habit. So whenever a craving would hit, he wouldn't fight it. No, he'd actually pick up a cigarette, set a timer for 10 minutes, and just sit there with the feeling, observing it, almost like it was a wave in the ocean. And here's the crucial thing he discovered. He started to notice that the really intense, overwhelming part of the craving, it only lasted for about 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. After that, it would just naturally start to fade away on its own. By just watching it without acting on it, he realized that these urges feel like they're going to last forever in the moment, but in reality, they're just these little brief waves that will always, always pass. And this is probably the most powerful takeaway of all. When you can surf that wave without getting pulled under, you learn a really profound truth. You are separate from your urges. You are the consciousness that is aware of the craving, not the craving itself. This brings us to another amazing Japanese concept that works perfectly with observation. It's called Kaizen, and it's basically the exact opposite of our obsession with dramatic overnight transformations. So what is Kaizen? Well, it's really just the art of getting 1% better every single day. Instead of trying to change everything all at once, you just focus on making these tiny, almost ridiculously small improvements, but you do it consistently over time. And this is why Kaizen is so brilliant. When you try to make a huge, drastic change, it basically triggers your brain's alarm system, and you get massive resistance. But these tiny 1% changes, they're so small, they just slip right under the radar. There's no fight, no big internal battle, just slow, steady, and quiet progress. So there was a woman in Kyoto who used this to break a shopping habit. She didn't do anything dramatic like cut up her credit cards. Nope. She just made one tiny new rule. Wait 24 hours before buying anything online. That one small, consistent action gradually rewired her brain's response to that impulse, and it led to this huge change over 6 months. Alright, the final piece of this puzzle isn't really about breaking things at all. It's actually about building. The idea here is that real, lasting change doesn't come from destroying your old habits, but from creating new, more meaningful ones that eventually make the old ones kind of irrelevant. And this is where the concept of ikigai, or your reason for being, comes into play. You know, a lot of bad habits are just there to fill a void. Maybe it's loneliness, or boredom, or stress. When you find your ikigai, you can address that underlying need directly. You end up replacing a destructive habit with something that genuinely gives you purpose. This is just the perfect metaphor for how this whole process works. Your bad habit is like this deeply carved out path in a forest. Your brain just follows it automatically, without thinking. You can't just wish that path away. But what you can do is start forging a new one. Now at first, that new path is tough. It takes conscious effort. But every single time you walk it, every time you choose that new positive routine, it gets clearer and easier to follow. And the old path, well, when it's left unused, it just slowly fades away, overgrown from neglect. You see, change isn't about force. It's all about repetition. So, let's end with this thought. What if that habit you want to break isn't some enemy you have to defeat? What if it's actually a teacher trying to point you towards some unmet need or a place where you're out of balance with yourself? What could you learn if you just stopped fighting it and instead simply got curious?